L. Barnes, and I was electrician's mate, petty officer, second class. Well, to start off, when I went to boot camp, of course that was an interesting experience. I was 17, and it was pretty terrifying at the beginning, but I realized that it was where I wanted to be, just something I had to do to accomplish what I wanted to. But the first thing that happened in boot camp was that they put me in something called a holding company. And the reason for that was that I'd passed all my physicals, but I filled out an extra form that asked me about diseases I had had. And it turns out that I'd had a bout with polio when I was 13. And they wouldn't release me for training. They were prepared to discharge me at that point if I didn't get a release from my doctor. So they put me in this holding company for a couple of weeks until they got a letter back from my doctor saying that I was fit for service. So that was the interesting part, really, about boot camp. But yeah, I went through it. It was tough, but the parts of it made me realize that I could do things I never thought I could. Going to bed at midnight and getting up at 3:30 in the morning for a whole week. And I thought I couldn't survive on anything less than 12 hours a day sleep. So that showed me that I was capable of doing a lot more than I thought I could. After boot camp, I was fortunate enough to go to electrician's mate school, and that was great for me because I'd always tinkered with electrical stuff, and I did very well with it. I graduated first in my class, and I got assigned aboard the Harwood. Now the Harwood at the time was, the Harwood, by the way, was my first of two ships. I was on the Harwood, which was DD-861, and I later was transferred to the Davis, which was DD-937, a newer destroyer, both destroyers. So I reported just after the first of the year to Mayport, Florida, where the Harwood was home ported at that time. And the ship wasn't there. It was actually coming back from a Mediterranean cruise. So they put me on a tender for a week or so, and that wasn't fun. They had me assigned to all kinds of silly jobs just to keep me busy. But when I got aboard the Harwood, I was very proud. Very proud to see the ship and to be a crew member, and I knew I could do well because I did well in school, and I knew I could do the work, and it was very interesting. The Harwood was a destroyer, and it had generators, and the job of the electricians were to man the watches in the engine rooms that over the generators and make sure the electrical power in the ship was generated and distributed properly, and also to do any electrical repairs, and that could be anywhere at all on the ship. So we got a chance to roam the whole ship and work on almost any kind of thing anywhere on the ship. And so that was good. I enjoyed all the work, and I was fairly good at it. Afterwards, we on the Harwood, the main cruise that we made was an Atlantic, Northern Atlantic midshipman training cruise in 1964. I was on the Harwood 64 and 65, and I was on the Davis in 1966. So aboard the Harwood, we went to several northern European countries: England, France, Belgium, and Norway. I enjoyed every one of them. Actually drank my first beer in Norway. All the rest of the guys were getting beer, and I just never had a beer. So I had one, and it wasn't so bad. And that was the beginning of my beer drinking days. But those are long over. Anyway, the main ports that we visited everyone was happy to see us in Europe at that time, and they would do tours for the locals, and people would come and we'd give them walk around on the ship. Now the ship was built just after World War II. It was under construction during World War II, so it was an older gunship. There were no rockets or anything like that aboard. Basically built as a gunship. It had no air-conditioned quarters, but one of the stories that I have, we somehow got a hold of an air conditioner unit and took out some bunks, and I'm not even sure the captain even knew this, but we installed this air conditioner unit in our R division quarters, and we had limited air conditioning down on that end of the ship because the ship got very hot, especially if we were in tropical waters of any kind. And we did. We sailed down to Guantanamo and had that sort of thing. Another interesting experience, I guess, is when we went into the shipyards for an overhaul. And the first class electrician that I worked for was a very astute old salt. He knew how to get things done. He was the lubricant, I think, of how things really happen. And he had us doing favors for the cooks for 6 months before this overhaul. So we saved up a whole pile of coffee, which was the barter that we wanted for doing favors for the cooks, putting little vent fans or lights over their bunks, that sort of thing. So they'd give us coffee. So we had this stockpile of coffee, and when we went into the shipyards, we got about half of our work done by what we call the yard birds, the civilian yard crew, for the sake of coffee, because they made them buy their own coffee. So if you turned in a couple of pounds of coffee, you could get basically a day's work done. And so we had a pretty easy time in the shipyard because he knew how to handle this. He'd been there before, and that's what the leadership was about. So I really enjoyed my time there with him particularly. But I did well. I left the ship with a commanding officer's commendation, and wound up reporting aboard the Davis.